You're listening to What to Read Next podcast, episode 29. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. This podcast is hosted by Lori Amin, a voracious reader of romance and young adult novels. In this podcast, she will share bite-sized book reviews and book recommendations. We hope you enjoy it. Hi, Alessandra. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So happy to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am 33. I live in Florida. I'm kind of a nomad at the moment. We're in between homes. But normally I'm in the panhandle of Florida, and I started writing fiction novels. I started writing, period, but I started writing fiction novels about 6 years ago in the summer of 2012. So I'm indie and hybrid. I'm with traditional publishers and also an indie author, but mostly indie.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've read a few of your books and I love them. So I'm
thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit more of your writing style and some of the stuff about being an indie publisher. It's so interesting. So first things first, what's your favorite character that you have written?
You know, that's one of those questions that's so hard to answer because it really feels like you live their life while you're writing their novels. But I'd have to say Deanna Madden is my favorite character. I wrote a trilogy with her, the Deanna Madden series. So I've spent, the most time in her head. And she's just such a fascinating character. She's when the series starts, she's a recluse who hasn't left her apartment in 3 years. And she obsesses over killing people. Like, she wants to kill people. And she's locked herself away to try to prevent herself from killing people. So it was just such a fascinating head to be in, and I really love her character, even though she's so, screwed up, psychologically. I love her, and readers love her. So I'd have to say she's my favorite.
Yeah, it's The Girl in the 60, right?
Yeah, yeah, The Girl in 60 is the first book.
Yeah, it's actually on my queue for the library, and I'm about to hit buying it because I've been in the queue for a while. I'm like, I'm just gonna read this book. So.
But that's good. That means other people are trying to, It's a great, if you like audiobooks, because it's one of those things, like, it's hard for me. It's a traditionally published book, so the ebook price is higher, and I'm a book cheapskate. It's hard for me to pay, $7.99 or $9.99 for an ebook. But if you are an audiobook listener, the audiobook is awesome. The narrator does such a great job with Deanna's voice. So I always also recommend that to some people because then it's just, like a credit on Audible.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I'm starting to listen to audiobooks lately at work. So that may be my next audiobook credit to you. So
there you go.
Awesome. So now we're going to talk about your writing style. So do you share your work along the way, or do you wait till you have your work ready to complete for others to read?
95% of the time, no one sees it until it's done. Okay. And then when it's done, I have like 3 betas. I have 2 editors. So I'll send it out to everybody at once. And then my first drafts are always just terrible. They're really messy. My books really transform through the draft. Okay. So thankfully my betas and my editors are used to that. So when they get it, they're not like, oh my God, this is terrible, ditch this book. They're really great with giving me feedback and helping me to really improve that novel through the writing. Now, the only series that's different is the duet I'm about to publish in June. That I published on Radish, which is an app that it's like Wattpad, and I published every chapter as I wrote it. So that was really interesting. But now I'm done with it, and I'm going through rewrites, and I'm really having to change a lot because I'm not an outliner. I write by the seat of my pants. I really tried to outline that book, but it still kind of wandered off in directions, that it didn't end up going in. So that really affected how it rolled out.
That's interesting. So how was that experience? What made you decide to go that route of doing kind of like a serial as opposed to waiting for others to read it when you have fully fleshed out novel?
I had done it before with Cosmo. I wrote, I was the bedroom blogger for cosmopolitan.com
Okay.
for a year. And that was really fun for me. I did the same thing. I published, they did it 3 times a week, like 500 word mini chapters, where Radish is 2,000 word chapters twice a week. So Radish was much more content, but I published throughout a year, a story, and then at the end of the year I polished it into a novel and published it. So I had gone through that process before, and it's kind of nice because it forces you to write every, you have those mini deadlines every week. That was nice, and Radish was sort of just a new outlet. Like, I'm always looking for ways to grow my brand and reach new readers, and they approached me and asked if I would do like exclusive content, something with them, and I was like, you know what, this will kind of force me to, over the next 6 or 9 months, write this series, and hold me accountable to it while I was, in the midst of other projects at the same time.
That's really exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to reading the final product, but I may check it out. So it's good to.
You can, on the app, you can read like the first, I want to say like 10 or 15 chapters, which is like 30,000 words. You can read it on the app now. Now it's different. Like in rewrites, I've improved it and changed circumstances, but the basic story is the same. The characters are the same. But yeah, if you like want to sample what the app is like, you can download the Radish app and read the first chunk of it for free.
That's awesome. Thank you. So how do you organize yourself as a writer? How do you keep track of your ideas, your inspirations, your characters? How does that process look like for you?
It's very unorganized.
That's okay.
Whenever ideas come all the time, which is a great thing. When I first started writing, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of ideas, and then what am I going to do when I don't have any more ideas? And that is no longer a concern at all. Ideas come all the time and from everywhere. And the hardest thing as an author, now I coach is really the wrong word. Now I help a lot of new authors on their journey. And that's one of the most common things I hear, and it's something I struggle with myself, is you're in the midst of a book, we've hit the middle part where you're just grinding through it, and it's hard, to continue, and you're bored with the story, and you're convinced yourself no one's ever going to read this book, and then you get this shiny new idea, and you want to drop everything and go and write this new fantastic idea, which is so much better than the idea you're currently working on. So that is what happens in pretty much every writer's journey. I mean, I'm sure there are some exceptions, but every writer I've talked to, that's very common. And when that happens for me, I allow myself a day to take off whatever I'm working on, and I'll write as much as I can with the new idea, and get a couple scenes down, and maybe do a basic outline, so I can know what, capture everything in my head. And then I have a folder of all my ideas, and it goes in the folder, and I don't look at it again until I'm ready to write a new book. And then I open up that folder and flip through all of those ideas. And that's one of the most fun days of my year. I get to do that 2 or 3 times a year, and I am so excited when I do that because, I'm able to look through all of those ideas, most of which I've absolutely forgotten about, and pick out what I'm going to write next. So that's how I categorize my ideas. The inspiration and inspiration and the characters. Whenever I'm working on a book, I have just a side Word doc that I jot down information about characters, because it's amazing how hard it is to remember eye color and age and location and their parents' names and sisters' names, and where they work and things like that. All of those details you really forget as you're writing. At least I do.
Yeah, I think and then it makes such a difference when you're like, oh, I forgot. I've read books when it's like the character starts one way and then it ends a completely different way. Not in the sense of the character growth, but in the sense of the character characteristics were one thing, and then it just became something different. So the reader is a pet peeve. So I'm glad that you were able to keep track of that and show the consistency at the end of the book.
Yeah, I definitely still make mistakes. That's the key to having a great team. The timeline is really hard with a novel.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, when you're done with every scene, you should just write a one-line description, and so you have a running outline of your book.
Yeah.
I always promise myself I'm going to do that. I never do it and normally then when I'm going through the first draft, then I'll do it. But that's really the best thing to do because then you can look through and read through your entire novel in 40 or 50 lines and kind of see where the issues are.
Yeah, that's true. So what it's like to write romance scenes? That's something I'm always curious because I consume a lot of romance novels, but the steamy scenes I find them they're great, they're part of it, and I get disappointed when there's none. But as a writer, what is it like for you to write those down?
Well, it's interesting because just like my dog. Hey, stop it! My dog's trying to play with me. He doesn't understand why I'm sitting on the floor. It's interesting because so I entered this industry not a romance reader. I've read a romance book before when I was young, but suspense is always what I read. It's still to this day is what I read. So it was interesting going into the world. When I sat down to write my first book, I assumed I would write a suspense, but instead this romance came out. It wasn't just a romance. It was a romance with swingers and threesomes and crazy stuff. So I didn't know that world, and I didn't necessarily follow the rules of that world in the correct manner. I mean, I had my main male character sleep with another female, while he was seeing my main character. I would never do that now. That's you don't do that. But so I kind of stepped into the world sideways, and sex scenes were one of the things that I had never read much of. I read 50 Shades of Grey, but other than that, I hadn't really read any sex scenes. And my training for that but me, as an individual woman, I loved to read. They don't sell them anymore, but there used to be these little books that you'd buy in sex shops that were just steamy sex scenes. That's all they were. And that was what I, as just a woman, would read before sex, to get in the mood. So that was sort of my training. And anyone that you can't even buy them now. I've tried to buy one in the store before. They look at me like they have no idea what I'm talking about. But they were like Tent House Forum, sort of. But these little trashy books. And no plot, nothing. But that was my training, and that was what I used. Now I've written books that have no sex whatsoever. The Ghost Rider is a book that is strictly just contemporary fiction and no romance. And I miss the tool of using a love scene because there are so many things that sex can heighten, so many things, whether it's anger or jealousy or love or whatever. If you have a fight, but it's edged in sexual tension, that can change the whole feel of the fight, or if a couple is breaking up and they have one last sex scene, that can be a really emotional and powerful moment, So it's a tool just like any other tool you can use in your writing tool belt. It's a tool, and if it's used effectively, it can make a huge difference in your novel. So my thought processes around sex in novels has really changed, and I think it can be used correctly. It can be used incorrectly. I read novels all the time that have sex scenes that are for no reason other than just to fill the book with sex scenes, and I don't think that is how you can use it. And there are some readers who love that, but for me, it should always have a purpose, and that is to either bring the couple closer or to convey an emotion or to change the novel in some way.
Yeah, I like that idea of having a purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I read books that's gratuitous, that is just basically over and over, and it's it gets repetitive when there's there should be a purpose behind it that just elevates the storyline. That's not just having sex for the sake of having sex. So
Absolutely.
So speaking of that, do you worry what other people think about what you write, like friends, family, people you might influence your characters? Do you worry about that?
So when I'll answer that by saying this: when I first started so I write under a pseudonym. Alessandra Torre is not my name. And when I first pubbed my first book, it was very important to me that that my writing was a secret. Like I was, and that was in twofold. One, I was certain that no one would ever buy my books and they'd be terrible, and I didn't want to be embarrassed by that failure, So that was one reason. The second reason was because that first book that came out of me when I sat down to write was the story of how my husband and I met, and I based those two characters 100%. I mean, physically, personality-wise, whatever, on what I was like at 21 when I met my husband and what he was like. Now, that book followed our love story almost to the T in terms of circumstances around our courtship until it got about 80% into the novel. And at that point in time, the main character, so that book is blindfolded in a sense. The main character, the male, comes out to the female that he is into swingers and threesomes and things like that. So at that point, it deviated from our love story, and that was going to be like the kink that carried the rest of that trilogy. Mm. Well, I was certain if my parents read this book, if anyone read this book, they were like, oh, that's her. Like, that's them, obviously, because it is us. I mean, it's just like us. We met, we went to Vegas within a week of meeting. We did all of these things, and then they're going to get to that portion of the story, and they're going to go, oh, and obviously they're into gangbangs, So it was like, I can't have anyone read this, and especially with it being my only book that was out at the time. It wasn't like now where I've written about, psychotic cam girls and all this other stuff, which obviously isn't me either. So it was, initially I was very worried about what people would think. And I was very worried about my family more than anything. Friends, my friends know me. My friends know us. They know that we're not, going to orgies on the weekends. But that was a major concern. And it wasn't until that book became wildly successful. I was getting calls from agents. It was at a bidding war with publishers, and I was getting huge dollar amounts thrown at me. And at that point in time, my husband and I were like, you know what? It's not really fair for us to keep this from our family and friends at this point. This is something like my parents would be really proud of me for, Like, it's not fair that I'm sitting here having a conversation with my mom and not mention anything about this huge life-changing event that is happening in my life. So at that point in time, I sat down and we basically came out, to my family and friends and said, this is what, I'm doing. I've written this book. It's very popular. And, that's what it is. And there were definitely some friends of ours that took 3 giant steps back away from us. We lost friends. We lost some family, very few families. I was actually very shocked how unbelievably supportive my family is. There are definitely friends and couples we used to hang out with who no longer, we haven't seen since they found out about it, So, but we've made new friends, and now it's sort of now it's like I have my second book. I was writing it, and I could feel myself censoring myself. Like, I was going crazy with the sex scene, and then I thought, oh my God, like my dad might read this, I could feel myself censoring myself, and I said, I can't do this. Like, I have to just let it go. Like, I have to just be like, whatever. And so that I made that decision, and I never looked back. And I don't ever regret anything I've written, and any friendships that I've lost, because they weren't, if it was that easy to lose them, then I didn't need to have them.
Yeah, it's so true. I think, you want to have people who are supportive over the different creative projects and different things you're doing. So if they're not supportive, they're just not the right fit for you anymore. We tend to outgrow certain relationships at a time.
Yes.
So, any tips for aspiring authors who are thinking about self-publishing? I think you dabble with traditional publishing and self-publishing. What maybe tips for self-publishing will be interesting to for my readers to hear about.
Absolutely. So, in the last, I made a lot of mistakes with self-publishing, and now I have a Alessandra Torre Inc. INK is a free site that has just a ton of posts about self-publishing and marketing. So if anyone's interested in that, and I do have a free webinar, 5 Secrets of Self-Publishing, which I can give you the link for. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'll give you the link for it. And it's my 5 top secrets. But my main advice, first of all, I am absolutely in love with self-publishing. I often wish that I had never sold my books to a traditional publisher, because while that extended range and exposure is nice, the control that I've lost is invaluable to me. So, and indie authors, which is self-published authors, their biggest strength is their adaptability. And if there is a hot trend in romance, an indie author can write a book and publish it and take advantage of that trend. It takes traditional publishers a year and a half to publish a book like that. Mm-hmm. That's how long it's going to take from the day that we begin, So we can move so much faster. If series are going crazy and everyone's doing, the first book in their series for free, you can try that. You can try that in a weekend. You can change your price immediately and look at your sales immediately and see that impact. As a traditionally published author, I get one number at the end of every 6 months, and that's how many ebooks I sold. I don't know what month I sold those ebooks. I don't know what day I sold those ebooks. Mm-hmm. I don't know what worked and what didn't. But as a self-published author, you have access to so much data, and you can adapt your marketing. You can try new things. You can run ads or run giveaways and immediately see those results. So that is a huge, huge advantage that we have. We can change our cover like that. We can change our blurbs like that. And traditional authors can't do that. Traditional publishers don't do that. So my number one tip is to watch the market. Don't be afraid to try new things and adapt your marketing. And my number one tip for writing is just don't chase trends. I know I just said if there's a hot genre, you could write it. You could, but stay consistent to your brand. Figure out your brand. And that might take 4 or 5 books to figure out what your brand and where you feel most comfortable writing. But be consistent. Don't ever rush to publish. Focus on the product, and that is number one. And be patient. I wrote my 6th or 7th book before I hit a bestseller list. This is a long game. It's not a sprint. Just remember that you love this and why you're writing, and you should be writing because you love it and not to get rich. And eventually, your brand will grow. It just takes time and consistent quality product.
Yeah.
That was probably way more than you wanted to know.
No, I think it's perfect. I love reading both traditional published books. I tend to read those on the weekends, but for the most part, I read self-published books, and I find them they're just as great. I think for me, one of the things as a reader who consumes a lot of romance, I find that self-published, you're able to do a better turnaround of providing you, the consumer, more products, as opposed to waiting for a year for the next sequence of the series. Whereas self-publishing, you can wait a few months. It's a quicker turnaround, and you can consume more product as a reader.
Absolutely, yeah. I pub 3 to 4 books a year. On the traditional calendar, it was 2 books a year max.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
All right, so we're heading to what I call what to read next. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions about books and authors, and just kind of a little bit about what you're currently working on. So the first question is, what type of books do you read, and do they influence your writing, and to what way?
So I would say 90% of what I read is suspense, non-romance suspense, and it absolutely affects my writing. In almost every novel that I write, there is a mystery in some form. And I don't mean like someone's going to die, there's danger afoot mystery, but there is a secret of some sort that the reader is trying to figure out. And that's, I don't ever want a reader to open up a book and know on the first paragraph, or to read the blurb and know what's going to happen. So I always hold something back, and reading suspense kind of trains my brain into that, to adding, something to keep them turning the pages and to keep them guessing. So absolutely.
Yes. And that's what I love about your books, because I was in my edge of my seat. I was like, I want to know what's next. I can't put it down until I figure out what the secret is, or what the outcome looks like. So thank you for your writing.
Oh, well, thank you for reading it.
Who is your favorite author?
I'd have to say my favorite author is either Gillian Flynn or Lisa Gardner. I love them both for the same reasons. They keep me guessing. Gillian Flynn more than Lisa Gardner, but they're both, just great at misdirection and just keeping me on my toes. So I love both of them.
Awesome. I'll definitely check Lisa Gardner. I've read a couple of Gillian Flynn's books, but I'll definitely check her out. So, can you give us a sneak peek of upcoming work, or a teaser to our audience of what you're working on?
Sure. So right now I'm in final edits on a duet. So it's a 2-book series. It's called the All In series. The first book's Even Money. The second book is Double Down. And they're both releasing in June, 2 weeks apart. And it's a series set in Vegas. It's a cocktail waitress and a casino owner, and it's their love story, but it's very suspenseful. It's a romantic suspense, and it's just as much suspense as it is romance. So I've had so much fun writing it. I really have, because they have. It's just. I put them through so much in this book, in these 2 books, and I really needed 2 books to do it. So, so that's the series. It's All In series, and the first book's Even Money, which is coming out June 4th.
Awesome. I'm definitely looking forward to. I'm probably going to pre-order. So thank you. So tell us where we can find you online.
So I'm on almost all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I'm super active on Goodreads. So if you're a Goodreads user, I'd love to see you on Goodreads. That's one of my favorite platforms, which is a rarity among self-published authors.
Yeah.
And then I have 2 websites, AlessandraTorre.com and Alessandra Torre Inc., which is INK.com. And Alessandra Torre Inc. is all just resources for authors. And AlessandраTorre.com is all my books, and a place for readers to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.